The topic for Chapter 9 is the judiciary. The judiciary is basically the court system. In the United States, most courts operate at the state and local level. The federal level, which we sometimes talk about federal cases or federal courts, is actually fairly limited. The vast majority of court cases in this country are heard at the state and local level. And the reason for that is that courts deal with the law, and most laws are passed at the state and local level. So it's really important to really understand, especially for this class, how the state courts are organized. And then I'm going to get into a little bit about how the courts in Michigan are organized specifically. But in general, a couple of things that are important when you talk about court cases and the law. First of all, there's the issue of jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is the authority of a given court to hear a case. And when we look at jurisdiction, there really are two things we're looking at. One is what type of case it is, and the other is what type of court we're dealing with. So when we talk about cases, cases are either federal or state. A federal case is one that is brought under federal jurisdiction. That means it deals with the federal law or the U.S. Constitution, or possibly both. But as I mentioned earlier, most cases don't fall under federal jurisdiction. The other type of case is a state case, and state cases are any case that involves state law, state constitutions, local laws, because local governments operate under the authority of the state that they're located in. So again, you have state cases, you have federal cases. Again, the vast majority of court cases in this country are state cases. Then you also have the kind of court you're dealing with. And basically there are two types of courts in the United States. One are courts that deal with trials, so we call them trial courts. That is what most people are familiar with when they think of a court. Trial courts decide the facts of a case, so whether it's a criminal case or a civil case. Criminal cases are those where someone is accused of violating a law, and the presumption is that they're innocent until proven guilty. And then a civil case is one where one party sues another for some wrong that they believe has happened. But whether it's a criminal case or a civil case, a trial court is there to decide what happened. Typically, you're going to have a single judge presiding over the trial. You might also have a jury. You're always going to have a jury if it's a criminal case, a criminal felony case. The jury will hear that case. In criminal cases, when someone is accused of a crime, the jury must be unanimous. That means everybody serving on that jury, which is 12 people, must come to the same verdict in order to find someone guilty. And if there's any division on the court, if you have some people on the jury, if some people are saying the person's guilty and other people are saying they're not guilty, that could lead to what's called a hung trial, meaning there's no verdict. But the goal is always to get to a verdict. And again, it has to be unanimous, either to find someone guilty or to find someone not guilty. And again, the presumption is that somebody is innocent unless proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in the court. So many of us think of trial courts and we think of criminal trials, but of course trial courts also deal with civil cases, civil lawsuits, where one party is suing another for some violation of their rights or their property or whatever the issue is. And again, the job of that court is to decide what exactly happened and who's responsible. So that's trial courts. Trial courts are the lowest level of the court system. But if you lose in a trial court, particularly in a criminal case, but even in civil lawsuits, you can appeal to a higher level. And that's the other kind of court in the United States is the appeals court. Now, appeals courts are completely different from trial courts. When most of us think of courts, we're thinking of trial courts. Appeals court's job is not to decide whether someone's guilty or not guilty or who's responsible for something happening. The appeals court's job is to decide, did the court below us make the right decision? Was it the right verdict if they were ruling on the trial court decision? And so the appeals court is dealing with the law. These are legal issues. They're deciding if it's at the state level, which is what we're focused on. They're going to look at the law in terms of the state constitution, but they also have to be guided also by the federal constitution because states cannot go against the federal constitution. But the focus is on the state. Now, because they're not dealing with whether someone's guilty or not guilty, but they're actually dealing with the law, there's no jury involved because a jury in a trial court is made up of average citizens, a jury of one's peers, and they're just simply there to decide, does the evidence show that somebody did something? But at this level, at the appeals court level, you're dealing with the law, so you want legal experts. So in the states, the appeals court is led by a panel of judges. In some cases, it's 3 judges. It could be 5. It could be 7. It could be as many as 9 judges hearing the case. It's almost always going to be an odd number of judges because they do not have to be unanimous in most cases, and so you need to have a majority. For the decision of the appeals court is not whether someone's guilty or not guilty. Their decision is, are we going to affirm the decision of the court below us? That means to say they were right, or are we going to reverse it? Are we going to say that they made the wrong decision? And that reasoning has to be based on the law. Once the court has ruled on whether a lower court made a mistake or not, then they have to explain their decision in a written opinion. And so the written opinion is the explanation, but it's also the law for that jurisdiction. Because appeals courts typically are covering more than just a single area of the state. It could be a whole region of a state. The highest court in a state is usually the state Supreme Court, and their jurisdiction is the entire state. So the opinion is going to be binding on anybody living within that court's jurisdiction. So the appeals court has a lot of influence and a lot of authority. Now, the highest court in a state, what's called the court of last resort, is the Supreme Court. Although in some states it has a different name. In most states it's called the Supreme Court. It's what's called in Michigan. Our Michigan Supreme Court is located in Lansing. And the job of the Supreme Court is to interpret the Constitution of that state and the laws of that state based on the state constitution. So again, you have either trial courts or appeals courts. Most cases stop at the trial court level. Most cases don't go to a full review by the appeals court, but that ability always exists. And then I should also mention that it is possible to take a case from the state Supreme Court to the U.S. Supreme Court, but only if there's a constitutional issue involving the U.S. Constitution. And then even in those cases, it's very rare that the U.S. Supreme Court would take those cases, but that is possible. But generally, the state Supreme Court is the final decision maker in that state, and even then, most cases don't make it that far. In Michigan, we have kind of a 4-level system, or 4 main types of main names of courts. The trial courts in Michigan for limited jurisdiction for cases that are typically misdemeanors, like if you get a traffic ticket, those are heard in state district courts. And the district courts in Michigan are numbered, so 53rd District Court or 42nd District Court. And they are typically within a city or a couple of cities together. And those are also the courts that would decide whether to indict someone, and then that would move them to a felony case. Major trial courts in Michigan are called the circuit court. Circuit courts typically operate at the county level, so there's Wayne County Circuit Court, for example. So and they deal with felonies, and they also deal with major civil lawsuits. So if there's a lot of money involved, it's going to go to the circuit court. And so the Wayne County Circuit Court handles all major trials in Wayne County. So you might start off, let's say we'll have a case that starts off in the district court in Dearborn. Maybe it's the person is being charged with a crime. The district court in Dearborn will decide whether there are enough charges to warrant indicting that person, and then that is then sent. They are then sent to the circuit court for the trial. If you want to appeal from the circuit court or even the trial court, but the district court, but certainly the circuit court, it would go to the Court of Appeals, which is the next level, kind of the intermediate level of appeals in Michigan. There's a Michigan Court of Appeals, and they have regions around the state. And so you just look at what region the community is in, and that's the appeals court it would go to. Again, their job is not to decide guilt or innocence. Their job is to decide, did the trial court, most likely the circuit court, make the right decision or the wrong decision, affirm it or reverse it. And then if the losing side in the case doesn't like that decision, then they can take it to the Michigan Supreme Court in Lansing. But the Michigan Supreme Court has a lot of choices over which cases it takes, and so it doesn't hear a lot of cases. But it is possible to take it to the Michigan Supreme Court. So again, in Michigan, you have the local district court, which is usually a limited jurisdiction court that deals with minor infractions of the law, traffic tickets, things like that. Major trials happen in the circuit courts in Michigan, and then which are usually county based, and then it goes to the Court of Appeals, and then it goes to the Michigan Supreme Court. The other thing I want to talk about is how judges are chosen in our state. Now, again, how they're chosen in Michigan as well as how they're chosen in other states. So there's several different models for how judges are chosen. Some are chosen by governors. That's called gubernatorial appointment, where the governor appoints someone and that person takes office. In some states, they might have to be confirmed by the state Senate. There's also the merit plan, sometimes called the Missouri plan because it originated in the state of Missouri. But it's a form of merit. The idea is that the governor can only appoint people who have been recommended to them by a commission based on the judicial credentials of those people. And then there might be a retention election later on, several years later, where the voters get a chance to say, yes, we want to keep this person in that position, or no, we don't. You also have elections, and many states, including Michigan, elect their state judges. And in Michigan, officially, we have nonpartisan elections, meaning when candidates run for judge in our state, they don't have a party label on the ballot. You could also have partisan elections where the party label is on there. In reality, particularly when you get to the state Supreme Court, our elections are not really nonpartisan because in the case of giving the example of the Michigan Supreme Court, all of the people who serve on the Michigan Supreme Court are nominated by political parties. So in Michigan, the Democrats and the Republicans will nominate candidates to run for the Michigan Supreme Court. They appear on the ballot with just their name, not the party label, but the parties have nominated them. So effectively, we do have Democratic justices, and Republican justices. They just don't have that label on the ballot. Currently, the other thing is that when there's a vacancy on a court, because judges in Michigan and other states serve terms. In Michigan, the lowest level judges serve 6-year terms, and the highest level at the Supreme Court serve 8-year terms. If a judge leaves in the middle of their term, let's say they're 3 years into a 6-year term, then whoever is governor at that point has the ability to appoint someone to replace them until the next election. And so sometimes you have judges who end up on the bench through a gubernatorial appointment, the governor appointing them, but eventually they're going to have to run for election in their own right. So that's how we do it in Michigan. Again, other states have elections. Some states have the governor appointing all judges, and then you have some that are chosen through merit. And there's different variations of those plans. But again, ours is a nonpartisan system of elections with the governor appointing people to fill out vacancies. One other thing I should point out is that in Michigan, when you're running for judge, if you are an incumbent, meaning you are currently serving as a judge and you're running for re-election, then your name appears on the ballot with the designation of judge or justice. If you serve at the Michigan Supreme Court, it's justice and then your name. If you're a judge at the lower court level, it's judge and your name. And that's viewed as giving an advantage to the incumbent because a lot of times people don't know who's running for judge, so they may just go with the person who has that title already. Whether that's a good idea or not, that's just how we do it in Michigan. So again, make sure you read the chapter carefully because there's a lot of information on how other states do their elections or choices for judge. One other thing I should mention about judges in Michigan, there is a retirement age. So when they reach that mandatory retirement age, they do have to step down once their term is up. So if you have any questions, please email me. Make sure you do the written assignment for the week, and thank you very much.